Welcome back to another edition of Elevate Your Grind, brought to you by the Cannabis Lab. I am your host, Todd Rosales, and thank you for joining us for another lovely episode. We had some great episodes last week, folks. If you missed those, we had them with Andrew D'Angelo, who's brother of Steve D'Angelo, a great and interesting story of his own right there. Really dig into the family dynamic between Andrew and Steve growing up. We had Flipcroft Cadero from Good Kind out in Texas, the man fighting the good fight out there, putting some great products into the market. A ton of great people on the show. Of course, if you missed those, you can always check those out at youtube.com/elevateyourgrind. And if you don't want to stare at me the whole time, you want to listen to your car, listen to your workout, wherever you can do it, just search wherever you find podcasts, whether that's Apple or Spotify or iHeart or Stitcher or all these other platforms I haven't even heard of. Just search for Elevate Your Grind. You'll find us there. All right, folks, coming up for Cannabis Lab on the 18th, we're having our in-person event talking about the Florida market with that 10% THC cap passed in the House subcommittee. That's something we're definitely going to have to focus on. Hopefully we'll have some answers and it won't make it all the way through, but there will definitely be a big focus on that going forward. And then, of course, on the 25th, we're going to have a national virtual panel on the importance of Florida as a market. We've got some great folks for you on that one as well. Check those out at joinclab.com. Without further ado, my guest today is really interesting to me because he shares the philosophy of a lot of people that I've met along my journey in cannabis, and the realization that recreational cannabis use can also lead to wellness cannabis use, and really just going more towards that natural food movement. I've been on multiple panels with my guest today. I'm a big fan of his company, the team he's assembled, what they're doing, really the experience. And to me, this company represents some of the best side of the cannabis industry, really focusing on moving this industry forward, being inclusive to anyone who wants to try it, and breaking the standard cannabis mold of just flower and concentrates and things like that. So without any further ado, please welcome my guest today, the founder and CEO of Pantry, Scott Jennings. Scott, thank you for joining me, man.
Thanks, Todd. Great to be here, brother.
And you're absolutely immediately making the point with the background behind you with the food is medicine. I mean, I imagine that's got to be the mantra at this point.
That is. Food is medicine and cannabis is medicine. And if you put them together, you get a pretty interesting intersection.
Yeah, man. It's interesting because you and I have had these conversations before. And, I try to bring the audience into the world that I've lived and my experiences. But I don't want to say this is newer for you as in like the last year, but in the past, I'd say half decade, this is where you've migrated to. Like the rest of us, you grew up smoking and eating fast food. And honestly, I'm really curious to know because you spent a lot of time in finance. I spent a short time in finance. They don't eat. Like they eat their big dinner at the end of the day with clients and stuff, but throughout the day, they don't eat. I remember when I first got my first job in finance, flew up to New York, worked out of the office. I was eating like 6-7 small meals a day, working out, and nobody ate. And I would just have a backpack full of food. When you were in finance, I mean, did you have, I'll call it a destructive lifestyle. Was that kind of the life that you lived?
Absolutely. I mean, from, toe to head, to be honest, I came in, I was hitting the deli. I was eating whatever I could, just eat it at the desk, bacon, eggs, all that bad stuff on there. And then at lunch, you're going back to the deli, you're eating another big Italian sandwich at the desk. You're always working while you're eating. And then you're going out with clients at night, eating a whole bunch of unhealthy stuff, adding a ton of booze onto it, cutting into your sleep, and then you're doing it all over again. And I think that was part of the journey. You got to get hit in the face a couple of times and know the path of pain and what it's like to eat like that and drink like that, to say, is that really sustainable? Is that the life I want? And, I wouldn't trade it for anything because, to be honest, it's only made my vision of this other side of the wellness journey clearer because I've been to the other side. I know it.
Yeah, man. I couldn't agree with you more because as I got older, I started to notice how much more things affected me, right? And I started to notice how much more my diet affected me. And when I would just eat trashy food, it wasn't just like the upset stomach in the morning or anything else like that. It was just lack of energy, being slow, no motivation to work out, no desire to eat healthy food, and just this craving for bad foods. And it almost becomes like this addiction. It's crazy. It's harder to beat than some of the other addictions. I'm sure you have plenty of insight into that.
Yeah, I mean, I also owned a bar in New York City, so it was added on top of that. And I would just say that, when you're not aware, you think what people are doing is the way of life, right? I thought this was the way of life. You wear a suit, you're walking around the city, getting an hour of sleep at night, you're abusing your body. And a lot of this happens, as I got older, I got to learn it's your invincible 20s, right? So in my 20s, I was indestructible. I could put anything in my body. I could do anything. And as long as I showed up to work, it didn't matter how hungover, or it didn't matter how, if I got a good night's sleep or whatever, it just had to show up to the trading desk, do my work, get it done, and muscle through. And that's what you think life is about. But it's all comes with age, because, age will get everybody. And I don't care if you have a health risk in your 20s, your teens, or it waits till your 40s. At some point, health is going to knock on your door and be like, hey, hello, you can't do this to me forever before it's going to catch up to you. And, it wasn't even the realization of how bad I was treating my body. It took me moving to California to see out here how different lifestyle is, because it's not just New York. It is part of the Northeast culture. It's cold, right? You want comfort food. You want to drink. You want to stay warm. And that was the environment I grew up in. And that was what I knew at the time.
Yeah, man. I mean, I remember when I went out to California about 2 years ago, and it was a shock to me. I was walking down Abbot Kinney and just trying to find a restaurant where I can find meat was not that easy, right? Which I'm all about eating healthier, but I am very, very much still a carnivore. But it's weird. As I get older, I still make the jokes about veganism and vegetarianism. And candidly, folks, if that's what works for you, great. I'm still going to make fun of it because it is funny to me. Sorry, that's just how it is, right? But,
Sure.
You see these better ways of eating and taking care of your body. Was there a moment or an event that happened to you outside of just the move to California that opened your eyes and was like, I need to be living a different way. I need to be putting different things in my body. Where did you finally start to discover that food was medicine?
I think it was over a long period of time, but there's one point in particular that came to me. We were working late and the corporate softball game was going to go on in a couple hours. Everybody's begging me to play. I didn't want to play. I go out there to play. And sure enough, I'm rounding second base and somebody just tackles me in a softball game and blows out my knee. So next thing I know, I've got a torn ACL and I'm on crutches in a suit trying to get around New York City. And nobody was giving me any, love or comfort. It's fight for the subway out there, even if you're on crutches. And so, through that rehab and actually going into yoga, I started, taking a lot of abuse in the finance world because I was a guy with a suit walking into, the trading floor with a yoga mat and a yoga towel. They're like, what are you doing? What's this? And that's something of what I've known over time is that when people don't like something, they bash it initially. And that's a lot of what goes on with veganism right now. And it's also what goes on with cannabis. I mean, come on, people bash it, then they realize how good it is. And then next thing you know, there are supporters. So I think it was tearing my ACL and realizing that, hey, you're not invincible. This was a really serious injury. And I had to get back to taking care of myself and I couldn't treat myself like shit. So it was about like a 9 to 11-month recovery. And I'm not talking about walking again because that's what physical therapy does. They're like, great, you can walk again. I'm like, I was an athlete before. I don't want to walk. I want to play sports. And so in order to get back to that with the flexibility and the muscles, and especially the small muscles around the knee to make sure I had that stability, that was a real wake up call. But then it was really coming out to here to California. And like you said, you can't find meat. I couldn't find anybody to have a drink with. I was like, hey, does anybody go for drinks? And everybody's like, we got to drive. We don't drink. And I was like, this is crazy. I was like, what are you guys doing? And obviously you're smelling pot everywhere. You're like, I guess if people just go to the beach and get high, like, is that, that's the West Coast alternative of going to the bar after work. So it's been a journey. I mean, even growing up, Todd, my dad was super health conscious. My mom is Puerto Rican. So, a lot of rice and beans growing up on the Puerto Rican side. My dad was very health conscious and wanted to make sure I was eating healthy. So he was planting those seeds from a very early age. Now, those seeds didn't grow into be something more until, honestly, I started aging out into my later 20s and into my 30s and saying, you know what, I'm not invincible and I care what I put in my body, But also along that journey, I met, my girlfriend today, and she's a nutritionist, and she's from California. And if you know something about California women, they really care about what they put in their body. And so she educated me to a next level. And it's been a journey, just realizing that, hey, food is not, the other aspect is like you use it as a celebratory gift, right? You get McDonald's after the football game or something. Food should maybe not have that relationship to be celebratory. It is nutrition. It is here to fuel you, and to award somebody bad food when they do something good, that kind of struck me as a counterintuitive.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see your point there, and I think I'm still stuck in the old ways because, when I go on vacation, the whole trip is planned around food, but I also try to make room for that food. But it's funny that you had mentioned when you met your girlfriend, because actually, when I had met my girlfriend, who's now my wife and now the mother of my kids, we met, and when I proposed to her, I was very heavy. It's 287 pounds. And I'm like, okay, I got to do something about this. You're fat, you're out of shape, you can't get up a flight of stairs. And I started going on a diet. Well, my trainer, great friend, sent me a diet that was essentially like a bodybuilder's cutting diet. My wife looked at it and she's like, you can't do this. You're going to kill yourself. Like, you're going to relapse, fall off the wagon, whatever it is. She's like, just eat better, make better choices and work out. I'm like, okay. So I started eating things that I thought were healthy. Right. And I remember every Monday I'd go to this place, Vinny's All Day Cafe, best chicken Caesar wrap in all of South Florida. And I would eat this chicken Caesar wrap, assuming that it was healthy. Right. Little did I know that it was very far from that. So my wife did a great job educating me on what was actually healthy. Just because it's called Skinny Pop doesn't mean it's any healthier than regular popcorn. It's just marketing, right? And it's funny, that Monday healthy lunch that I was getting then became my Friday treat, where it was, man, you did great. This isn't horrible for you. It's not as bad as like fried chicken or anything else. So eat this because you like it. And also what I would do is telling you about the small meals. I would eat half of it at like noon, the other half at like 3. And it just worked out better that way. And because of her just kind of making these little tweaks, it got me deeper down that road. So it's funny how these people come into your life and give you this advice and make it better. I just saw so much of my story there too. So it's awesome. You move to the West Coast, you start cleaning up the diet, you start becoming more health conscious. And at some point you decide, okay, I'm going to do the hardest thing in the world and become a cannabis entrepreneur. And again, you said, oh, that's not hard enough. Instead of going after the traditional cannabis business, I'm going to go after cannabis for wellness. And that's not hard enough, because now I'm going to get the niche market of people who want to put whole foods in their bodies and want to enjoy cannabis, which shockingly has a lot of overlap. But, at the time, I'm sure when you started, high THC flower and concentrates is what all the bud tenders in California were leading their customers to. So how, looking at the market, and I know that you had placed some investments in it, you've got to be passionate to chase this journey for Pantry, because on paper, and I'm sure everybody in your investment community is like, Scott, you're crazy. This is a long shot.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. And, shout out to you and C-Lab and everything you're doing here, because the education piece is huge. Shout out to your wife for educating you, and my girlfriend for educating me. The whole journey has just been, each milestone you're learning something new. But, the truth is, they said that to the functional food market. I talked to Good AM Chocolate, and he said, when he talked to Whole Foods 10 years ago, and he said, hey, how about a sleep chocolate? You could put it at right by checkout. And Whole Foods like, functional chocolate? What is that? Like, they laughed him out of there, right? And to be honest, yeah, I saw the industry is crazy hard. I've been investing in it. And, what made me the most nervous was those big CapEx expenditures, right? You raise 20 million, you spend the 20 million, you need 60 million more, right? So what was most important to me was the consumer, right? And I am a consumer. And as you said, like, growing up, your dealer is just that. He's got whatever he's got. There's no options. And so I've read a lot of research, and they said, well, you're either in the THC camp or you're in the CBD camp. I said, what do you mean? I didn't have any options to be in any camp. I had whatever the guy had growing up. But now we have options. And when I looked at the options, I said, okay, if I want to save my lungs, I have to go to candy. right? And that was always the light bulb moment between Paul and I. We were like, why would we swap out saving our lungs for candy? I don't eat candy today, and I only smoke because, you know, of the benefits that flower and that I like it. And so we started looking at the market and we said, look, there's definitely a conscious consumer out there that's looking for a better product. But to your point and to the education point, we ran into a pretty heavy wall. You know, it was a THC hungry market, and it still is. And we keep educating people because, leaning on my investment background and leaning on my partners up in Canada, we like to go where the puck is, not where the puck, you know, where the puck's going, not where it's at, right? So where the puck is going, and you saw it in Ease's data, is that new consumers coming into the space want food and beverage. They're kind of curious. They don't smoke. They're looking for ailments. They're looking for relief. They're looking for all these benefits of cannabis, but they're not going to pick up a joint for the first time, right? So we saw those trends. And while the community has been, you know, somewhat resistant and very THC hungry, it's a grind. It's an education thing. And that's why, you know, a lot of love to you and what you're doing here to make sure the education gets out there and people understand what's going on. But on the flip side, there's a lot of educating you have to do to investors too, because a lot of investors, like, you know, everybody wants to get in here and get wealthy, and they don't understand it's a very competitive landscape. There's more ways to fall on your face than there are to succeed. And so I think it's education both ways. And I often take, you know, random calls from new people trying to come into the space, because I know the best way to push the whole industry forward is to be a steward for people's experience within the space. You don't want a new mother having 1,000 milligram brownie, just as you don't want an investor coming in and losing on their first investment. You want them both to have a good experience and turn around and speak about the positives of cannabis and the cannabis industry to their communities. So it's been a lot of education, and it's difficult, but, you know, we're very, you know, strong, fast in our vision and our passion. And we see one by one, we get a lot of people that share a lot of love, and we just know if we win one customer at a time, you know, that's going to amount to something.
Yeah, man, it's funny. I didn't even know that I had a want or a need for your product until I turned my attention back to edibles. And you make a good point, right? And I mentioned at the beginning of this call that I believe that your company helps showcase the best of what cannabis has to offer to the general public. And I mean that because, being in the industry, I get to see what's out there and I get to see the products. And don't get me wrong, you know, as a legacy consumer, I love seeing the high grade flower and the concentrates and all that. But I also can know and have the ability to look at it and say, that's focusing on the legacy cannabis market, right? That's not when federal legalization happens and the general public starts accepting cannabis into their daily lives, what's going to be the most consumed form. I talked to Jake from Can, and you know, that was something that I spoke to him about, saying that I think Can is helping lead the way for general social consumption because it's what people are used to. And then I look at Pantry, and it's the same thing, right? You guys are putting out normal food that people wouldn't mind putting into their body. Someone who's going to choose an edible over smoking it is probably pretty health conscious as it is. They don't want to affect their lungs. And this is perfect for them. And not only that, you have every niche for whatever dietary restrictions that they have, whether it's voluntary or involuntary. And that's what I love about it, right? I mean, so I don't know if I've shared this story on air or not yet, but at end of January, I ended up getting COVID. And, you know, the number one thing is I'm like, well, I'm not going to smoke, right? But I've also read a few studies, and I've called it out on this show that when I first read them, I thought they were bullshit. But there has been a study about CBD's effectiveness on the inflammation that COVID causes, right? So I go, I want to continue to consume cannabis. Obviously, it's got to be high to CBD. And I went out and got Wana 1-to-1 gummies, because in Florida, that is the healthiest option that we have. And I specifically went to Wana because they try to keep the ingredients cleaner, not to the level that you do, but that's why I did it, right? Now, if we had Pantry here, and I'm not just saying this because you're on the show, that would have been the perfect option, right?
Totally.
That would have been the perfect option for me to put something into my body that is clean and still get the benefits from both the THC and CBD and the entourage effect. So it's funny now, that experience led me back into the edibles world. And now going even further, you know, your products have a little bit of a focus on microdosing, right? Or a whole focus on microdosing. And now I'm really intrigued, because there are some days where I'll try to microdose throughout the day with flour, and that's very easy to overindulge. And then, you know, the smallest gummies that I've seen here in Florida so far have been 10 milligrams. And as much as, yeah, I can probably get through the day on that, I'd like to try 2.5. I'd like to try 5. And I'd really like to see how that affects me throughout the day, where it's, can I stay pretty clear-minded, but have that relaxed, stress-free benefits of cannabis? And that's really what intrigues me with you. So you go that one step further where it's, okay, healthy, it's edible, and now it's microdose. I mean, I imagine that a big part of a lot of the conversations you have is truly educating folks on how to integrate cannabis as like a nutraceutical.
Absolutely. You're spot on. And, what you went through with COVID is what we heard a lot, right? We heard a lot of people say they didn't, not everybody got COVID, but a lot of people say, oh, COVID's here. I want to put down the joint and I want to move over to an ingestible. I want to move over to Pantry, right? And, a lot of people were going through anxiety and they can't sleep. And they said, well, I don't need a 10 or a 20, right? And we've microdosed all the way down to 1 milligram. And the cool thing that we educate around the 1 milligram or sub 5 milligram is that you don't really have a psychoactive high, right? It's more of a wellness thing. And so when I give it to people, whether they're 80 years old or 30 years old, and they have 5 milligrams or 2.5, they say, well, Scott, it didn't relate to that 1,000 milligram brownie story I've always had in my head for, I don't know, decades, right? And I said, well, do you feel better? I said, well, the pain, I'm not paying attention to the pain anymore. It's kind of, resided. Or I took I'm speaking specifically about somebody that's older who's going through a lot of pain. They were able to sleep, right? So you're able to comfort them. And that's something that I also lean from from our female partners, which is trust and safety. You're trying to build a bridge here, and that microdosing is the bridge for them to dip their toes in. And if you give somebody 5 or 10, they could have that, maybe mixed or too heavy of experience and reverse course, right? And so you don't want to do that. And so the microdosing, it also allows people to find their level, because I'm not here to say, hey, you've got pain and you may need 30 milligrams. And I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't have 30 milligrams. I'm just saying that I broke it down into pieces so that you can find that appropriate level for you. And I think that's what's important, especially as we move away from the one size fits all to customized medicine or specialized medicine. I always say this, I don't understand why they say take 2 Advil for everybody. There's no difference. Yeah. It doesn't matter who you are or what you're doing, it's 2 Advil. And I always say, well, why can't you take 1? Somebody might need 3, So I think that customization is important. And I think that we do a lot of that in our education, say, hey, come on in, have a microdose, check in with yourself, see how you feel, because it's not our job to tell you how much to take. It's our job to educate you, and then for you to check in with yourself to see what that level is. And, the mothers love it, because mothers, it's very important. They want to maintain control. They either have babies or their babies are older, but it's very important for women to maintain control from the feedback that I've gotten, because they have to look out for people, right? And so they don't want to be out of control. They don't want to be too drunk. They don't want to be too high. And so educating them on that microdose is very impactful for them, because they feel like they can have one, Todd, and enjoy their day and possibly have a better day, which is, so important.
Yeah, man. I mean, you and I have talked about this on other panels and everything else. We talked about leveraging cannabis for athletics, leveraging it for your workouts and everything else. I mean, I think the number one thing keeping people from actually going and doing their workout, obviously, is the fact that they think it's going to suck. It's just that mental block, like, I don't want to do this. And I can't tell you how many times leveraging cannabis, it just kind of takes that away, where I'm like, I don't want to work out. And like, I'll take a hit of something or whatever it is. And I'm just like I find myself like, just my shoulders are looser and like I'm shadow boxing, and I'm like, oh shit, I got to get to the gym. Right. And it completely changes my attitude, or even housework. Right. So, I mean, it's funny, and I'd love to hear your take on this. I think most people would look and say cannabis for working out, that's anti-productive or counterproductive. But at the end of the day, when you're doing it and you're dosing it right, and the effects that you're going for, it is probably, to me, one of the best pre-workouts that you can have.
I've been working out with cannabis for a long time. A lot of people have used a lot of other substances in my life, and a little cannabis goes a long way for me. It was, early on in life, it was definitely a post-workout kind of muscle relaxer, anti-inflammatory. As I got older and, different dosing was available, I was able to use it while working out. And so, yeah, I think it goes hand in hand with working out. I mean, there's so many people at the gym. I have a counterculture shirt where it's like, I consume weed. And I used to wear it to Orange Theory all the time. And people at Orange Theory be like, huh, you're here at 5 a.m. and you consume weed? Like, what is that? And I'm like, yeah, the stigma that people don't work hard on cannabis is broken. That is propaganda. That's wrong. We need to get rid of that. And so, yeah, working out in cannabis, I enjoy it. But like you said, even down to cleaning the house or cooking with my girlfriend. Look, we're all at home these days. It's hard to kind of change speed sometimes. You're in your office 10 hours and all of a sudden you just got to change caps and like go into family mode. And it's like, yeah, a little edible helps transition that so you could just enjoy cooking or slow down. And so there's all these benefits to it. But, you know, I'll share a special story here, Todd, is that a couple of years ago, my father, he had a cardiac arrest and he like basically died in front of me, like was insane. And I had to do CPR. Lifeguard came and did CPR. Ambulance came and did CPR. And, you know, this was in West LA. And they're thinking about bringing him to the small Marina Del Rey hospital. And they tell him like, no, this is super serious. We got to go to UCLA. They bring him over to UCLA. And one of the first things they did was they said, hey, we have to get inflammation down throughout his whole body in order to allow his body to focus on repairing his brain, his head. And so they put him in a self-induced hypothermia, this huge ice pack, right? And I was like, why are they doing this? They said, because it's so important to minimize inflammation within the body so that the body can work more efficiently at repairing the brain. Well, it was a week and a half later, and he woke up and we're trying to figure out what he remembers and what he doesn't. He lost about 2 weeks of memory, but they said that it was every step that people took to keep his blood pumping and keep his inflammation down, that his, you know, memory was able to come back as strong as it was. And you're reading research that says so many problems go back to inflammation, right? So you have to be thinking about that. And even thinking about Wim Hof, who I love, and he's doing these crazy things. And you're like, how does he do that, right? And he talks about how the body reacts in the cold and how it keeps inflammation down. So, you know, look, I don't have all the answers, but there's certain signals out there that are telling you, hey, we should be leaning into this. And I think inflammation is a big one. And I think cannabis, we all know that cannabis helps with inflammation. So to lean into that more and to get inflammation down in the body, including, as Dr. Deb would say, you know, all those foods that I ate on Wall Street, they all have all these oils in them. All those oils cause inflammation, right? So you got to change your diet. You got to put stuff in your body that will help reduce or manage your inflammation, and it will help your body run better, and it will help you have a better experience in life. And so there's all these anecdotal pieces of evidence out there in my personal life and what I've seen out there in the world. And it's one of the, you know, driving passions of leading this to say, hey, let's combine these two things to make sure the body has the nutrients it needs so that people can live, you know, a fruitful life.
Yeah, man. And see, that's what's upsetting to me, right? And what you had mentioned, that you have all this anecdotal evidence and all this experiential evidence, and I do too, and a lot of people in our industry does, but our federal government won't allow us to truly study this to the point where the FDA can back the fact that CBD does fight inflammation, or that other cannabinoids fight inflammation. And we look like an industry of crazy people shouting from the rooftops to the general public, because we all have experienced it. We've all used it. We've understood it. We know how to integrate it into our lives. And we're saying this does help. And everyone's like, no, I don't believe you. Where's the proof? Where are the studies? Well, the studies are illegal. We can't do them. We can't do double blind studies and all that other great stuff. And that's the unfortunate part, is it's kind of like this, we're this secret club, and it's like, you have to trust us, but we don't want it to be that way. I'm sure everybody in the industry would love to see an official study and be like, look right there. We were right. We were right all along. And just because of prohibition, y'all think we're not. So, you know, that's the upsetting part here. And, you know, folks like you are continuing to fight the fight. And I think, again, that a company like yours is a great face of the industry, because it is microdose. It is specific. It is about health and wellness. And to your point, you're a food company that just happens to use cannabis as an ingredient.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, Chef Mags, my partner, he'd tell you just because he uses mushrooms doesn't make him a mushroom chef, right? So, you know, yes, we do use mushrooms, we do use cannabis, but, you know, the overarching method is that, you know, food is medicine, right? And so, you know, the other, you know, part of this envelope that we're pulling back is all these ancient herbs, adaptogens and botanicals. And nobody, you know, what's the power of those things and combining them with cannabis and these minor cannabinoids? There's so much to be done in the pairing of those two ingredients to help people. But like you said, the research isn't there. So for example, CBN, right? We're hearing great consumer feedback on CBN that it helps them, but the research isn't there. So somebody like me that wants to be integral, because you and I and a lot of people have the same experience. Hey, I went to the healthy aisle and I had my healthy cereal, and then I found out that it's not so healthy, right? So it's very important to build a brand with integrity, and I don't want to put out stuff that's not true. So it's a very big balance, because the consumers could say, hey, that's helping me and you should make a product. Otherwise, I may have to go to, the traditional market or the non-regulated tested market. And so you're like finding this balance between, okay, the research is missing, the consumer says they want it, maybe let's put something out, let's not make any claims, but let's just help consumers, talk to each other and share their experiences. But, that's another thing that grinds my gears, because I've seen a lot of brands make a lot of claims and they're hurting the trust. We're trying to build trust with consumers around here to make sure that they know that this is a product that can help them. And unfortunately, a lot of brands stretch that truth. And one of the ones that I found that was very interesting is terpenes, right? So there's, as Dr. Deb, our chief medical officer, would tell you, there's no evidence that says consuming certain terpenes will change your mood or drive an effect. And I'd say, that's so interesting, because so many brands lean into, having certain terpenes and driving certain effects. And then you read, not anecdotal, it's pretty widely known that, most of your serotonin comes from your gut health, and a lot of your feelings and emotions do come from your gut. So you're saying, is this something that wasn't researched yet, or is there something that's not true? And then you have to kind of dive into the quantity, right? Because just because you put 1 milligram of some terpene in there and say it's going to drive an effect, that's going to hurt the trust. You got to know how much of that terpene needs to be ingested. And there's just no research around that, but it all just ties back to trust and wanting to build this, the brand and the trust with the consumer to make sure we don't hurt them and make sure they keep coming back.
Yeah, man, it's all interesting to me, and it's a lot of what I learn is just by doing the show and talking to folks like you and grabbing that education. But there isn't a lot of places where I can go outside of interviews in our industry to find this information. So, it is interesting. I want to kind of shift. I know we've been talking about your journey in the company and how I think it's very important in the cannabis space, but the Pantry experience goes beyond just the products that you put out there, where you've actually done these, experiential experiences. I don't think that's the right word, but you've done these pantry experiences where you're doing these catered events with infused food. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because those experiences sound great. I even told you, man, I wish I was out on the West Coast so I can join them. But talk to me about those experiences, because you're bringing in world-renowned chefs and serving whole, healthy food that's infused. Talk to us a little bit about those experiences.
Amazing and great segue. I would say that at the highest level, it's another platform for education. Here we are educating in a digital world on a podcast, but when we get people together in an authentic center to educate them, not just on cannabis, but on the food that they're putting in their body. Because as an investor, I've invested in a lot of food restaurants, and what you've seen is the very huge shift towards fast casual. How quick can we get you the food, get it down, your stomach, and get you out? And you're losing the connection with the food. You're losing the connection with the chef. You're losing the connection with the farmer, right? And so bringing that all back to, front and center and slowing down the pace and having people come and educating them, it's really amazing, because it's also a lot more family driven. We've done small parties, we've done big parties, we've done celebrities and billionaires. And what we see is there's this mix, right? There's always the guys that may be more likely to, hey, you got a joint, or I may pick up some flour or something. We usually feature a beverage there as well, but it's the female, demographic that come in and they're really so thirsty for that education, right? And educating them on the microdosing and on the meal and how this can be paired together for them to have a good night. Honestly, you see them, like their eyes light up and they're just like, wow, is this true? Can I take some home? Because they're also, there's still that stigma, like, can I consume it in public around my friends? Should I? Am I going to lose control? But a lot of people ask for those gift bags to take them home. And I would just say that the best thing about it is it goes back to that word authentic, because when you look at big media, or you look at the science, or you look at the FDA and you say, what's going on? Why are we not researching this, right? Why do you not provide this stuff? And you're seeing trust deteriorate across the board, including with your doctor, right? So where can we have higher trust? Small social circles. It's one of the reasons why micro-influencing is so important, because you're more likely to listen to your wife or your girlfriend than you are to listen to, hey, top 10, here are the best cannabis products. Well, is that true? Did somebody pay for that? How did we get to that top 10? And so when you get in an authentic setting and you educate and you have different people with different consumption histories, you get a lot of different questions, and then you see them start talking with each other. And the most important thing is to make sure it's tested and regulated, because as Chef Mags will tell you, we get stories all the time about people saying, yeah, what's this event? You know, I don't think they put any cannabis into it. And then somebody says, well, I went to this other event and they put too much in it. You know what I mean? And I said, well, was it regulated and tested product, right? Because they have to know the dose. If it's a cannabis chef that's using a traditional market product that they say, yeah, I know the dose. Do they? You know what I mean? Like when we ask Mags and we ask Holden, Chef Holden Jagger, love you, brother. When we ask them, they're like, they don't want themselves, you know, mixing it. You don't go to the bar and have them make the gin in the back. You know, you want that stuff tested and regulated. And so we're building that trust, and we love that space. And, you know, even cooler than that, we're talking to hotels because hotels want it. We're talking to wedding events, you know, weddings want that there. And so, you know, it's going into more places. And, you know, it was only a couple of years ago that Outside Lands had a big debut with the cannabis activation in there. And so, you know, cannabis is reaching more consumers, because you're not going to get to the 30 plus million people in California with 800 dispensaries.
Yeah, man. I love that idea, and I love that you're approaching all those outlets and everything else. And be honest, I wish we didn't get married yet. I might have to renew my vows just so I can have Pantry cater the wedding, dude. I think that would be a phenomenal experience. Listen, man, I made a joke at the beginning of the show, you know, that you tried this ultra niche, really kind of corner of the market. But at the end of the day, I think the people you're targeting, I'd love your input on this, the people that are health conscious, the people that looked at food as medicine, the people that are open to herbalism and natural remedies and what I would call preventative remedies, are more open to trying cannabis. So obviously I made that joke, but the reality is you're realistically not so much targeting pure cannabis consumers, but just people who are interested in health and wellness and educating them on how cannabis can be integrated. You know, so I make the joke, but I imagine the target market that you have, they're more open to trying this.
You know, you get boxed into that question all the time. Who is your target customer? What's their age? What's their demographic? What do they look like? What do they do? And I say, well, quite frankly, I've talked to so many people from so many different walks of life that say, hey, I'm looking for a better quality of life. I'm looking to sleep better. I'm looking to manage my pain better. I'm looking to not drink so much or smoke so many cigarettes or whatever it may be. And to be honest, I find it, you know, a little limiting to say it's only yogis. You know, I work out, and so those people, you know, relate to me. I love going to the gym, very active, and that's my type of, you know, one-to-one mirroring consumer. But, you know, there's a lot of women out there. There's a lot of mothers out there that are looking towards our product and help. There's a lot of elderly people out there that are looking for this, because you talk about dietary restrictions. I mean, go up to the older people. They got all these dietary restrictions. Talk to diabetics. So many diabetics come to me and say, I can't have anything in the edible section. I say, hold on. I made olive oil. You can take the olive oil home and make something that, you know, aligns with your dietary restriction. I also made a low sugar keto bite that aligns with your dietary restriction. So, you know, to me, my target customer is anybody that wants to live a better quality of life. And I think if that's what they want, they're going to come to this brand. They're going to find education. They're going to find products that help promote a better life. And in return, it won't be a silver bullet, but it will be one of many things that will help them, you know, live a better and more fulfilled life. And when they turn around and look at me and they say, Scott, thank you so much. I'm sleeping or my pain. And I make the joke all the time. They look at me like I'm a doctor or the Pope, and I'm neither. I'm just a guy that understands the benefit of the product, and I'd like to educate and share it with more people. And if big tech and regulation would get out of the way, we can get on with the education we got to do.
Yeah, man, I'm all for it, and I support everything you just said. I think it's definitely the way that our industry needs to move forward, supporting those who need it and making sure that there are entry areas for everybody, whether you have dietary restrictions, whether you have health restrictions, whatever it is. And it's funny, you talk about just purely yogis that feel this way, but I feel like it's gone so far beyond that, that maybe, you know, a few years ago it was that way. But I can tell you personally, I grew up playing football. I grew up in the gym. I grew up lifting heavy ass weight. I still do. And that's still what I love more than anything else. Hitting a heavy bag, lifting heavy weights. I'm so intrigued by yoga because of all the heavy lifting and all the other stuff I've done. My mobility sucks. My mobility is terrible. And one of the things I really enjoy doing is playing golf, right? My backswing is so freaking short because I'm not flexible. So, you know, I think that that lifestyle is really starting to appeal to the general public. And I hope, you know, the nutraceutical, the cannabis use, and even just the herbalism, right? You and I have talked about someone we both admire, Ricky Williams, and Ricky was the one who introduced me to herbalism. And it's really intriguing to me. I think you live this lifestyle too, but people look at this Eastern medicine, this Chinese herbalism, and they think, oh, it's just trash, it's garbage, it's not real. When reality of it is, it's maintenance, it's preventative medication, it's making sure that your body has the right nutrients so that it doesn't break down. Everything in our life we maintain. You get a car, you get the oil change, you change the training fluid, you wash it, you make sure it looks good, right? Anything you have in your house, you're maintaining your air conditioning, you get it serviced. But our body, we only go to the doctors when something's wrong. That doesn't make sense. The most important vehicle in our lives, we don't do anything to until it's telling us that there's something wrong with it. How many people are probably running around the country with their check engine lights on? They don't even know it. And when I say that, I mean the fictional check engine light in their body. You know, I'm sure that you support this whole herbalism movement. Do you think more people need to look into the preventative methods of herbalism and using these nutraceuticals and herbs to prevent illness?
I mean, the biggest thing I do with investing is I look at trends, right? And to me, the trend is unequivocally yes, right? People are waking up and they're saying, hey, what's up? I go to the doctor, I get one pill, then I'm on five, right? And so people are looking for an alternative, right? And the unfortunate part is that there's this, you know, there's a lot of, you know, in the age of free information, we're also in an age of so much misinformation, right? So you have all this content out there that kind of sticks in the way of getting to clear answers around that. But the trend, in my opinion, 1000%. But if you know something, you know, big industries don't die easy. They don't really like you to change. You know, I'm also a big investor and you know, fanboy of Elon Musk and Tesla and everything they're doing. You think oil and gas wants you switching from buying gas, you know, every other week to charging at your house and never buying gas, you know, again? No, they don't. You know, do you think they want you off their food and you know, healing your body with herbs so that you don't have to go back for these pills? They don't. And so the trend is there. It's simply an education thing. The trend will accelerate or decelerate depending on how well we're able to educate and depending on how well we're able to regulate the misinformation out there. I mean, let's rewind 70 years. Imagine if we never had propaganda around cannabis and hemp. Where would we be today on herbalism, on those two plants? You know, we would be light years ahead. So the Band-Aid's off. The younger generation's too smart. They care about ESG. They care about herbalism. They care about preventative medicine. And sometimes they say the only way to get change is for the old guards to move over and new guards come in. And I think the new guards keep coming in and they're going to keep shifting the consumer behaviors. And, you know, even the big guys like Mondelez, they were out today with an article saying, yep, we know people care, environmental, you know, sustainable, corporate governance, right? So you're hearing the big guys say, hey, those young generations, those are the biggest consumers today. And if they care about herbalism, we're going to have to care about herbalism because otherwise it's adapt or die and they don't want to die. So they have to adapt. And so the trend's clear, my friend. You're on the journey. I'm on the journey. You're educating people. I'm educating people. And slowly we're seeing state by state legalize and soon it will happen on a federal level, and we'll have more countries, join in, and hopefully we'll get to the real root of herbalism and the benefits of it. Because even though the information's out there, it's very buried, it's very deep and old, and we'd like to get a refreshed look at all that stuff to make sure we validate the stuff that we learned in the past, even though I think it's already validated, because one of the best validations I've ever seen is the validation of time. If it's not real, time would kill it off.
Yeah, man. That's awesome to hear. And I feel privileged to have people like Ricky and people like you kind of helping me educate myself on this journey, because it's a lot easier that way. And I'm getting it directly from the source. And it's kind of changed my view on a lot of the things that I do. I still have plenty of the bad habits, but old habits died hard, and I'm making my way towards this side, and it's companies like yours that are making it easier, right? You're putting it out there, and no matter how hard it is for you to get it out there, your passion and your drive is behind it. And not only are you singing the praises of cannabis and the industry that's behind it, but just overall healthy living and wellness and integrating the two together, I think is an amazing message that we can share with the world, man.
That's what we were talking to Ricky about, because what I didn't know, which a lot of people didn't know, is there's some stupid number, like 99% of consumers are not getting enough protein in their diet. And I've been socializing it, and I've been asking, am I wrong? Because I'm talking to nutritionists, and they're saying that you should be getting more protein. And when you talk to John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods, he'll say, we're eating more than we ever had, but we're having less nutrients than we ever had. We're going the wrong way, right? So I just, with Ricky and the protein movement, I mean, that's a whole nother thing. If you look at, how people deplete at the older ages of life, they're frail. Why are they frail? Are they eating the protein at the later stages of their life? They usually stop eating the protein. They usually have, less appetite at that age. And that's how they start frailing off. And there's an acceleration when you get less protein in the later stages of their life versus when you're eating more protein then. So there's a lot of facets to this. It's not just cannabis. It's not just herbalism. It is, protein as well. And it's also sustainability, because there's a lot of people, I'm not a diehard vegan either. My girlfriend is from South Africa. She loves red meat, and we love red meat. But the truth is, if you look at the protein journey, right? You and I used to work out, lift weights a lot. Now I'm a big yogi and runner guy. But when you're working out, what do they tell you? You need more protein. So what do you go to? Protein powder, and you go to like a chicken breast in your pocket. You're just banging it out because you got to have more protein. And so, there's even things in it, like the chicken in the car, you got to eat it. And so there's not enough chicken, turkey, and fish in the world to feed everybody the protein it needs, right? And so I was talking to, James Cameron's group, and they got a very large hemp farm up in Canada. And they're informing me, like they said, the hemp seed, it's the best ratio of protein, fiber, and omegas. So when you talk about giving the body the nutrients, put cannabis on the side, put herbalism on the side, you're talking about core macros now. The hemp plant, the hemp seed is one of the best sustainable sources of that. And that's just another movement within the overall umbrella.
Yeah, man. No, it's funny. I had Shadi Rami on the show, and we did our first cooking episode where she walked me through one of her recipes on the show, and it was a hemp apple crumble. And not only it was very high in protein, it was delicious. And I can only imagine starting to use some of your products like the olive oil to infuse with some of those foods too would be absolutely incredible, man. I mean, I think this is the future, right? I really do. And I didn't just say that because you're on the show, but I think this is what's going to get a lot of people towards that, is how do we continue to eat better, and how do we take care of ourselves, and how does that sustain long term, and what can we mix into our diet and to our nutrients that's going to be good? Because even if you look at vitamins, there's so many vitamins out there that are unhealthy and everything else, where we just need to get it from food. And you talk to anybody who's out there, like the really healthy people, they'll start to tell you, it's just eat real food. What's the secret to losing weight? Eat real food. Don't eat stuff that's processed. Don't eat any of this stuff. Eat real food, right? Now, I do think there's a balance to it, right? The 80-20 rule, because there is some really good food out there that's not good for you. Ice cream, cookies,
Amen.
They're all amazing. But for the most part, I think you need to eat 80% real food.
Look, you got to live it a little bit, like you can get hit by the bus tomorrow. And so, you gotta, everything in moderation, including moderation, is what I say. And there's balance to be had for everybody. So I agree, man. Amen to that.
Well, listen, we've talked a lot about the health, the journey, and all that. What can we expect from 1933 this year? What can we get excited about that you're? I always tell people that you're able to share because I know you all have some industry secrets that you keep in your back pocket. But you guys are doing great. I believe you're in California, Colorado, Canada. If I missed anything, let us know. But what can we get excited about this year?
Yeah, Pantry's always innovating, right? So taking a page from Elon Musk, you can never stop innovating. Where consumer desires are now and where they'll be in the future. I mean, I think we all know edibles are, there's 50% of consumers are eating gummies. Will 50% of edible consumers in the future eat gummies? Probably not, right? So always innovating and coming out with new products and including new ingredients, right? Like functional mushrooms, like the hemp seed, going after the protein bar, going after functional mushroom bars. Also expansion on states. We want to bring this back to New York, my home state. There's a lot of excitement there. People have been rooting me on from New York out here. I can't believe that they still got to call a traditional, dealer or driver to come by. I feel like I'm going back in time and I'm just like, what's going on? So looking forward to the East Coast expansion and looking forward to, East Coast getting out of their medical, driver's seat right now and moving over to the recreational side. But I do hope they keep their medical focus because, that kind of patient care interaction is very important. And a lot of times the rec market could be, stigmatized by just, going for revenue versus, going for what's right. And that's what Pantry's trying to do. We're trying to do what's right. So a lot of expansion on the product side and on the market side. But shout out, Pantry is growing. We brought on some amazing team members, Vincent, Tara, Katie, love you guys. So glad to have you on the team. And, Todd, you're the best, brother. You're just one of those good gems in the industry. And if anybody out there doesn't know Todd, reach out to Todd because I've told people a lot. There are some bad actors in this space, but there are some gems, and Todd's one of them.
Thank you, man. That means a lot to me. Setting up this show, I'm a fan of the industry. And like I said, the reason I started this show is because I've got to meet people like you, and everybody I've had on the show have been absolutely incredible, extremely helpful, extremely kind. And I get jealous, man. You guys are all out there in California on the West Coast. And I'm like, I'm stuck here in Florida. I've been stuck here for a year. I want to come out and see everybody. So at some point when I get out to the West Coast, hopefully we can get to one of those events, man. Do something live from one of your events. That'd be amazing.
Oh, absolutely. We've been planning that one for a while, and we've got a lot more educational cooking series. People want to know, how do I infuse at home? It's not that complicated. The chefs are at work. We're putting some content together, but Todd, we can't wait to have you at one of the events. Maybe do it live. Let's all get vaccinated. Let's be safe. Let's open this thing back up. And I look forward to seeing everybody in person.
Awesome, man. Well, before we let you go, let's get any plugs out there. Tell us where we can find you.
Oh, Pantry Food Co. on Instagram, pantrycannabis.com. You check us out. You can email us at chef@pantryfoodco.com. Give us a like, give us a follow, give us a comment. Tell us what you're looking for. There's a lot of different people looking for different types of food. We are people pleasers. We want to make people happy and make quality food. So reach out, engage. We'd love to hear from you.
Definitely go check that out. And thank you, Scott. And thank you, everybody at home. It's been another episode of Elevate Your Grind. Of course, if you missed any part of this episode, you can catch it on Monday on our YouTube page at youtube.com/elevate your grind. Just like I said at the beginning of the show, if you don't want to stare at our pretty faces the whole time, find us on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeart, the whole gambit of podcast apps by searching for Elevate Your Grind. If you're in the South Florida area, check out the C-Lab event on March 18th. And if you're not in South Florida, if you're anywhere in the country and you want to learn about the Florida market and just where cannabis is in general, check out our panel on March 25th. And you can see more about that at joinclab.com, folks. This has been another episode of Elevate Your Grind, and we will see you next time.